You find me back here at my favorite Tesla supercharger in the city of Newark, right down the street from Lucid. And companies keep sending me free Tesla superchargers to try on these. So I keep collecting them. I've got a whole series of videos. If you haven't seen those, check them out. But I like to put these to the test, charge it from somewhere in the 20s up to 80%, see how it holds the 500 amp boost that the Ford Lightning does, see if it heats up. So we're going to do all of those things today. This is an adapter from a company called Hugner. I'm not too familiar with them. There's a couple unique things about it, and there's a couple of the typical question marks. So we're going to give it all the test. We're going to check out the thermals on this. We'll check the ambient temperature as usual. It's a pretty moderate day here in the Bay Area, so that shouldn't be a factor. It's only going to be how much does the Tesla supercharger impact this adapter. So we will plug it in, check the temperature to start. We'll check it after the boost. We'll check it again as we get closer to 80%. Can it hold the curve the way it should? Stay tuned. Let's find out. All right, there's a couple unique things about this adapter that I haven't seen anybody do before. This is the only one that has these protective covers on here. I'm not usually a big fan of these if it comes to things like the charge port. I just find that they kind of get in the way. So I don't know how I feel about this. You can see that as I try to take this off, I'm trying to do this with one hand, guys, so sorry about that. You know, what am I going to do with this? So it seems like a cool idea to have this cover, but now I've got this this floppy thing that, where am I supposed to put it? They do send you this case, so you can throw it back into the case, I suppose. But right now my feeling is that it's just kind of in the way and unnecessary. Not that that has anything to do with charging performance. So we are going to, like we have before, plug this into the Lightning and see what it does. My first question mark, as it has been with the other ones, is whether or not there is a switch back here. So this one has a pretty simple to use, I don't know if I would call that a switch because I'm not hearing anything click, but it does have this mechanism that's going to allow it to plug and unplug from the supercharger. But what it's lacking is the interlock down the front. If you've seen my other videos, you'll know that between the two DC pins, ideally you have an interlock piece in there, and that's going to prevent you from disconnecting the supercharger handle from the adapter, and that's a safety mechanism. At the very least, there should be some type of switch that as soon as you press it, stops charging from happening. So we're going to check that out to begin with, because I'm not confident with this that there is a switch in here. I'm not hearing it. I do hear a switch here. If I hold it up to the microphone, maybe you'll hear it. So maybe you heard that switch as I clicked this, but I don't hear one when I press this bottom one. And that is an initial indication that perhaps there's not any type of safety mechanism in there. So let me see if I can get that plugged in a bit better than I had. So with that plugged into the charge port, we are going to take and plug in the Tesla supercharger, see if it lets me plug it in this way. Oh, interesting, it does not. So that's kind of an interesting good sign. I cannot plug the Tesla cable into the adapter when it's plugged into the truck. That tells me there is some type of interlock happening here. Let me see if I plug that in and press the button, if it lets me plug it in. I'm gonna need perhaps two hands for this. Let me see if I can capture this on the video. It does. If I press the button, it does. So if I press that button, it does let me plug in the supercharger handle. So that button does lock it out unless you press it, but that's not really, if there's a switch there, it doesn't really do much. So let's get this thing charging. Let's see if this button, when we press it, stops the charging. Then we're gonna take some temperatures. Then we're gonna see how the charge curve does. And then we'll let you know what we think. All right, we're starting out here at 26% state of charge. You can see that it is starting to ramp up our charge speed. We are already up to 173 kilowatts and climbing. That's exactly what we would hope to see here in the Lightning. It can go as high as 190. Let me close the door here and try to get rid of that glare. And we'll come back down and take a look. So now that I've gotten rid of the glare, you can see it better. We're already up to 27%. 177 kilowatts seems to be where it is settling in at. Oh, 178 continues to climb. So somewhere in this high 170s, 180s is typical. I've seen it go as high as 190, 193. But yeah, 178, so far so good. It's starting off the way we would expect it to. Let's take a look at our car scanner app here for a second. So we've got 358 volts is our pack voltage. Right now we've got 78 degrees for the temperature of the battery pack. We are doing, if we look here, 177 kilowatts. That's all normal. So everything so far so good on the car scanner app. So let's go see if we press that button. That's going to be a big question here. That button underneath, I'm curious if it's a switch. If it is a switch, and I don't think it is, because like I said, I didn't feel or hear any clicking on that. If that's a switch, it should stop it from charging. So you can see right there that I am pressing that button. That button is going to be what allows me to release the Tesla supercharger handle from the adapter. And it's not shutting off when I press that button. So that means there's no switch in there, which is what I thought. And that is a safety risk, because if somebody were to take and pull this out right now, it's live. And that could cause an arc. And that is definitely not ideal. That should not happen. So that is one of the biggest red flags. And I see this over and over again when it comes to these adapters, where there is not the interlock pin and they did not take any steps to put a switch in there to prevent people from doing this. This is not uncommon. And it's one of those things that is rarely called out in any kind of feedback that people give, because I don't know that everybody understands the safety risk involved. So if I was going to give some feedback, and in fact I will, I always do, when I give some feedback to the Hugner group, I'm going to tell them, hey, I think you should add a switch to that is an actual switch, not just a mechanism. That's a big safety deal. So with that said, let's take a quick temperature check here. Let's see how it's doing. I really should have done this a little bit earlier. I waited a bit too long. But here at the Tesla supercharger handle itself, there's a 104. I think I saw it jump to 109 for a bit there. There's a 106, 107. And then as we go to the actual adapter, we're sitting at 99. I saw 103, 104, 105. So that is all typical. Nothing there concerns me. The UL standard allows these adapters to get up to in the neighborhood of 130 degrees. So we're nowhere near that. So the real question is going to be, what does it look like as it gets to 80% and we go through the entire charge curve? The most I've seen so far here is now up to 112. Let's take a look and again, look at the car scanner app inside. So you can see we're still kind of in this 170 neighborhood. It has come down a little bit. So we're at 40%, we're at 169. It does look like it's starting to taper off the 500 amps, and you can see that here. We're at 460 and falling. So this is going to start to come down, and it looks like it's gradually tapering, which is interesting. Normally I see it much more aggressive on the taper. This one is slowly making its way down. We're now at 166. It is up to 40%, so it held that 500 amp peak for a good long time. That's great to see. Let's let it run a little bit further, and let's see when it settles back into that 130, 140 kilowatt area. And let's see how it does there. And then we should expect to see it closer to 120. Should hold that all the way close to 80%, somewhere in that 115 to 120 mark. So let's monitor it and see how it does. Okay, so just a quick update. It has started to taper down and hold steady at 120 kilowatts. So from 40 to 46, 47%, it ramped down from that 170 neighborhood all the way down to 120. Sometimes I'll see it hold in the 140s longer, and I'm not seeing that here. Not sure if that's an adapter thing or just an overall state of charge as it approaches 47, 50%. It is still slowly ticking down here. You can see it now down to 118. So we're going to let it continue to ride here and see how that curve goes. It definitely, there it's back up to 119, 120. So it's staying right where it should be. Let's see it hold that. It needs to hold that all the way through 70% and really almost up to 80%, I would say. And then let's see what it does after that. When it gets to 80, it should cut down into the mid 50s. So let's see if that holds true. Oh, interesting. Right now, I feel like it just shut off. I am at 48% and I do not see a charge speed here. As I come over here, I look and I've got 4 amps here. So I've definitely had something happen. Let's go outside of the truck and let's check the temperature. Let's see if there's anything here with the temperature that lets us know that it might have had a sensor go off and stop it. So the handle itself, we're still looking at that 110 degrees area on the Tesla supercharger handle. You can see here, if you look, you see that red flashing light. So that's an indicator of something not going right. And then as we take a look at the temperature of the adapter itself, we've got 115, but 118, 120. So 120 is still not up to 130. So that shouldn't be outside of where it's allowed to operate. So as I kind of come around here, I am seeing that 118, 119, 120 is the max. I'm not seeing it going over that on the adapter, but something definitely went wrong here. I'm gonna give it a second chance. I'm gonna unplug it and see if it will start back up. So let's get that done. All right, so now comes the curious part for science. We're gonna see what happens when we plug this back in again. So one of the things with the Lightning is it gives that initial 500 amp boost, and in theory, it might do it again, which will only serve to further warm this up. So I'm curious what will happen. I'm not gonna move superchargers. I'm gonna keep it right here on the same one. I can feel on the handle that the handle is warm. So it's not a super hot day here. It's moderate, it's around 85 degrees. There's a breeze, but it's not like it's Arizona weather. So let's check it out. Let's plug it in. Let's see if it will reconnect. And then let's see what kind of amps we draw, and then let's see if it overheats it, or if it does continue a second time and get it all the way to 80% now that we're at about 47. So not sure why it disconnected. You saw that red error light flashing on the Lightning, but let's get this guy plugged in and let's give it a second shot for science. All right, we got it clicked in. Let's see what it does. Let's flip the camera around and take a look. So what we should see here, and see if I can block the sun, we should see a blue flashing light after it does the handshake part. Oh, you can see there we've got a red flashing light. A red flashing light is not a good sign. So that is an indication of, I'm not sure what. Did the truck not like it? Is the adapter too hot? I think what I'm gonna do now is looking around to see if I wanna move superchargers here. As I look down, there are a number of cars plugged in, so kind of limits what I'm able to do, but I do think I can move over one spot and give it another shot at a charger that hasn't been heated up or anything, and maybe that'll give a few minutes for the adapter to cool off and give a chance for the truck to restart as I turn it on, move it, and back it up again. So I'm gonna give it one more shot and see what it does. All right, so we have moved over one spot. We're gonna give it another shot, plug it in, see if it will connect or if it gives us that red flashing light of doom. If it does it again at initial plug-in, obviously that's a concern and an indication of something that is very, very wrong as far as this adapter goes. If it does start to charge again, but airs out before it reaches 80%, I think that would indicate a thermal limit where it started to overheat. And then hopefully it will go all the way to 80%, and we'll see how it does. But it's had just a couple minutes to cool off, not very long. Took me about 2 to 3 minutes to move the truck and then get all set up again. So it has cooled off the adapter a bit. The supercharger is obviously fresh and ready to go. So with that said, let's see what happens as we plug it in and see what kind of connection we get, and let's see if the supercharger will ramp back up. Oh no, and we have another fail. That is very interesting. So let me do one more thing. All right, so I'm gonna do something a little bit differently on this charge. I have got the Tesla app this time. I am gonna activate the charge on 2B, which is the charger that I'm on. And instead of doing the plug-in charge with the truck, in case something's going weird with the handshake there and it's just not wanting to initialize, I am going to now plug it in using the Tesla app, and let's see if that performs any differently. Let's check it out. All right, let's give it a nice plug. It clicked in place, and now the moment, does it connect and does it ramp up? Here we do see the blue light, which is a positive sign. I do hear the truck fan starting to turn on. The handshaking is happening, and I should be able to get the supercharger to ramp up now, and we should get some charging. It looks like, in fact, with the blue flashing light that we do. So let's take a look inside the truck and see, is it giving us another 500 amp boost? And in fact, let's check out the temperature before we do that. You can see the handle temperature is at 103, 105 there as we move, 106 as we get to the adapter connection. And then here you've got 107 on the side, 109 I saw flash on there on the side of the adapter. See if we see anything else. 109 seems to be the biggest number that I've seen so far. So let's see if it's giving us that 500 amp boost, and then let's see what happens and if it airs out one more time. So yes, this is what you got to love about Ford. 184 kilowatts there. You can see in the corner we were at 50% and it's ripping with that 500 amp boost. Let's take a look here and see. Again, if we can get the glare out of the way, hopefully, but you can see 475 amps. And that is coming down, though, rather quickly. We're still in the 170s, but it's definitely starting to taper. And I'm going to leave this here for a bit, and let's see how quickly it goes down. I'll speed this up a bit so you can see it where it finally ends up. But it got that initial 500 amp boost, and it looks like it's already starting to taper. Okay, so you could watch it there taper as it went from 50 to 60% all the way down into the 130 kilowatt area where it seems to be holding right now. Very interesting. I don't normally see a slow, gradual drop off. I typically see it stabilize at some point and then drop and get a new level and stabilize there and hold that curve all the way to the end. So right now at 130, I expect it still to come down a bit more into the 1-teens, 120 at best, as we start to approach further into the curve until it gets to 80. So pausing it there mid-charge, I think, threw it off a bit. I can't tell if that's the truck or the supercharger overheating. Let's take another look at temperatures real quick until we get to 80%. We'll take it one more time, but I want to see where it's at now, coming off that 500 amp boost and tapering down slowly from that 184 mark that we saw at the peak all the way down to 130 where it's holding right now at 62%. Let's take a look at those temperatures. All right, let's check in at the supercharger handle itself. We're still in that 110 neighborhood on the heat as we get to where the handle and the adapter connect. 108, 109, and keep moving it around here looking for a hot spot. There's a 110, and just kind of moving it around at 112 that I saw, 113 right here at the base where the DC pin areas go into the truck. But again, nothing outrageous here, nothing approaching 130. As I look down here and get to the actual cable itself, it seems to be in the 103 neighborhood, moving up here 105 at the handle. So nothing overheating. 108 is what I've seen the most. Hopefully it doesn't disconnect again, and we will see at the end if that temperature spikes at all. But right now it's doing about what we would expect it to do. So I don't know what happened there with that communication. I do think the thermals just got the best of this adapter as it got into the 120s, and I do think it maybe derated itself or did something and disconnected from the truck. I will say I just love all the EVs here in the Bay Area. As I look around the chargers, of course you've got all the Teslas here, but as you continue to look at the hotel behind me, for example, there is a Tesla plugged in, there's a Rivian plugged in, there's a Mustang Mach-E plugged in, we've even got a Lucid, which is probably coming from the Lucid world headquarters. It's right down the street. Maybe they've got somebody coming here for work. So yeah, I mean, we got a whole collection here. Rivian, Lucid, Mustang Mach-E, of course all the Teslas and the Lightning, they're all here. And that's why I love coming to this supercharger. You get to see all these different things. The only thing we're missing is a Cybertruck. Maybe we'll have one pull up here before the end of the charger if we're lucky. But lots of great stuff to see, so I enjoy coming here. And it's got some of the lower rates in the Bay Area. Keeping in mind that lower rates for the Bay Area is still in the 40 cents per kilowatt hour if you're on the membership, and up into the low 50s if you're not on the membership. So California is a whole different beast, and of course really the value comes from charging at home. All right, with that said, let's let this thing continue to 80%, and let's look at some final numbers when we reach it. Just as I went to enter the truck, here we are again. We have ourselves a charging station fault. So that is definitely not what we wanted to see. Let's take a look here at the plug. I don't have any red light. It probably shut off already, but it has stopped charging again. So I'm gonna flip it around one more time, look at the temperatures. We just took them, so it shouldn't be anything crazy here. We're still seeing the 107, 109 I saw flash up earlier. There's a 109, there's a 112, a 114. So again, not that 130 or even 120 that we saw earlier. But I gotta say, oh, that's not looking good, and I just don't think there's any reason to continue the experiment at this point. It's stopped charging twice now. As it gets into that 120 or high 110 range, maybe there's sensors inside that are disconnecting it, I'm not sure. But I have not seen that before. Of all the adapters that I've tried, I've never had one do this, so that's a bummer. I'll definitely communicate that to the folks over at Hugner, and it's disappointing news. I'm sure that they're not gonna wanna hear that, and hopefully they don't get too defensive, but it is what it is, guys. So let's, at this point, unplug and wrap up. So unfortunately, I think I have to call this a fail, and I feel bad for these guys because I'm sure they're trying to do the best they can, but they're not always having the best engineering, not always integrating the safety measures, and it just doesn't always work the way it should. Maybe they haven't done interoperability tests with all the vehicles. I don't know the story, but look, in the EV world, I'm always rooting for them. I want to see the expansion of EV adoption, but I do want to see it safe, guys. A lot of things go into this. None of these adapters really are UL rated, so be mindful if you ever see somebody claim that they are. There's only really Amphenol that has become UL rated, and all the rest, even the ones that are approved adapters, have not been. So I want to talk a little bit about that. If you've seen my other videos, you can skip the end here because you've seen it already, but I do want to talk a little bit about what happens with warranty claims. I do want to talk a little bit about the UL certification and what that looks like, and I do want to talk about the things to be careful of and the different ways these things are designed. So let's go over to that. I think, unfortunately for this one, it's just hard to recommend it. I'm going to give the feedback. Hopefully they can go back to the drawing board and make some improvements, and we can see something that is a little bit more dependable down the road from these guys. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about warranties and UL standards and listings and what is out there and what isn't, and what are red flags you should pay attention to. So let's talk about some of the other adapters you may come across. We're going to start with this one, which is an AC charge adapter, and you never want to confuse this with a NACS to CCS DC adapter, or the other way around. These adapters allow you to charge on a Tesla wall connector at your home, or when you're at a hotel like you have behind me, one of the Tesla destination chargers. This is the only place you're going to use these, not at a supercharger. So now let's check out these DC adapters, and we'll start with the original. This is the Tesla designed adapter that was sent out by Ford and Rivian when the Tesla supercharger network was first opened to other manufacturers. You'll see here that it has a plastic case all the way around. It's about a 2-pound adapter, very light, very compact. You can see that they've done a good job here making sure that you can't get confused with the pins. You've got your bottom 2 DC pins, you've got your ground in the middle, and then you've got your communication and your proximity pin. On top where the AC pins would be for a CCS, there are no pins at all. No way to get confused that you would ever be able to do AC charging with this. That's really a great design. You'll also see as you zoom in here and look close that there is a lockout pin right there between the DC pins. And this is essential. This is what prevents you from being able to pull out the handle from the adapter while it's still plugged into the vehicle. Same thing is done here with the newest adapter from Ford. This is the Ford Lectron version. This one you can see is much bigger, much heavier. And you can see that again, if you look down the barrel, that you've got the 2 DC pins, that lockout, right, that interlock right between. Then you've got your ground, your proximity, and your sensor, and then nothing on top where the AC would be. Again, this prevents you from being able to take the handle and remove it from the adapter while it's plugged into the vehicle. A great design. Now, A to Z goes about it a little bit differently, but it accomplishes the same thing. So as we take a look at the A to Z, you can see that down the barrel you've got your DC pins, but there is no interlock. You can also see that there are 2 pins there where AC would be, but if you look carefully, there are no contacts, no pins in there. I prefer if these were blank, but you can see again, there is no chance anybody will be able to use this for AC, and no adapter should ever claim that you can. This is the heaviest of the bunch. It feels really robust. I really enjoy using the A to Z primarily because it has this single button design and control. The advantage to this design is that while you can still plug the handle into the adapter when you initiate the charge, you cannot remove it at the end of the charge. What happens is this is locked into the vehicle, and then until you press this and remove it, you cannot remove the handle. Let's take a look at how that works. So some people prefer to be able to plug the adapter into the vehicle first and then take the handle and plug it in. With the A to Z, you can absolutely do that. We're going to stop this charge real quick before my plug-in charge kicks on. But here is the important difference here between this and some of the others. This one, you cannot press the button and remove the handle. You have to take the button, press it down, and remove the adapter from the truck itself. And now that that's removed, you can press it again and remove the handle. That's a difference that really matters. You can see here now that we're using the Ford Lectron version, this is the newest adapter that they have, that I cannot take the handle and put it into the adapter while it's plugged into the vehicle. This has to be done first. And that again is because of that lockout pin. That same safety though makes it so that at the end of the charge, you can't possibly remove this from the adapter and have any risk of arcing. So again, that's the reason for having that extra piece in there that the Ford Lectron and the Tesla original adapter have. Let's take a look at that one. So here we've got the Tesla adapter plugged in, and you can see that there is a little lever here, and that lever is what you use to disconnect the handle from the adapter when you're done charging. But here you can see I cannot plug this in to the adapter while it's plugged into the vehicle. It's again because of that interlock piece that's there between the two DC pins. One thing people worry about with these adapters is that manufacturers like Ford and Rivian and others can void your warranty if you don't use their specific approved adapter. However, there is a law called the Magnuson-Moss Act, which does not allow manufacturers to take and void your warranty for using third-party aftermarket accessories and tools. And the adapter certainly falls into that. Now, do you want to risk that hassle if it happens? What are the odds of it happening at all? How would they know what adapter you even used? These are all things you do want to consider, and you have to think about what you're comfortable with when you're choosing an adapter. I can tell you this much, that I've used a lot of them, and the biggest thing for me is, can it handle the 500 amps and can it handle the 1000 volts? Now this is where it gets tricky. The only real official approved adapter are those that come from the manufacturer or Tesla themselves. Every other adapter on the marketplace is, according to their terms of use, not an approved adapter. And so you want to think about that and whether or not you want to go with one of these aftermarket adapters that are out there. I'll also mention that a lot of these you have to be careful about, because in the description, they'll say they're UL listed or they'll say they're safety certified. And I've just found that not to be the case. I can tell you there is a UL certification, but the only one currently that has done that and passed it is Amphenol, and that adapter is not available on the market. Others will say that they are safety certified and UL certified, but they really mean is that the cladding or the casing might meet some different UL code. It's not the adapter code for UL certification. I can promise you, as the date of this recording, which is August of 2025, even the OEM ones are not UL certified. It has not happened yet. And one of the big reasons for that is the way the UL certification is written, you have to be able to test your adapter on a non-liquid cooled cable. And that is not going to happen with 500 amps. How these folks are going to market their adapters, they're not going to be able to do it for 1000 volts, 500 amps. It's just not possible. So it's somewhere in the 300 amp area is what these adapters will do with a non-liquid cooled cable. And so anytime you see somebody say that they are certified at 500 amps, 1000 volts, UL listed, safety certified, I promise you they are talking about something other than the actual adapter UL listing, or they're just making it up entirely. Let that be a red flag for you.